Before he was a saint, he was a fisherman. Calloused hands, salt in his beard, a voice too loud for the room. His name was Simon, a Galilean, hot-tempered, quick to speak, quicker to act, the kind of man who spoke first and understood later. Then, a teacher from Nazareth walked along the shore and called him away from his nets and gave him a new name, Cephas, Peter, the rock. It was a strange name for such a restless man, because Peter was not stone. Peter was fire. One night, on a storm-tossed sea, he saw his master walking on the water and dared to step out himself. For a breath, he walked on waves. Then he looked down, and the deep swallowed his courage. In a garden called Gethsemane, when soldiers came with torches, it was Peter who drew a sword. One wild swing in the dark, a servant's ear falling to the ground. Loyalty, armed and clumsy and utterly human. Hours earlier, at a low table lit by oil lamps, he had made a promise. Though all others fall away, he would not. Though it cost him his life, he would never leave. By midnight, the promise was ash. They led Jesus, bound, into the courtyard of the high priest. Peter followed at a distance, close enough to see, far enough to deny. He warmed his hands at a charcoal fire. The smoke curled around his face. A servant girl looked twice. "Do you know him?" 3 times the question came. 3 times he answered no. Each denial a little louder, each one a little smaller than the last. Then, somewhere beyond the walls, a rooster crowed. And Peter remembered. He stumbled out into the dark and wept. Bitterly, completely. The rock had shattered. But the story does not end in the dark. Days later, on the shore of Galilee, a figure stood at dawn beside a fire. Another charcoal fire, the same bitter smell, and breakfast waiting on the coals. 3 times his master asked him, "Do you love me?" Once for each denial, unburying each wound and closing it. "Feed my sheep," Jesus told him. "Tend my lambs." The fisher of fish would become a shepherd of souls, and the man who broke in a courtyard would be trusted to hold a church together. He became the leader of the apostles, the first voice at Pentecost, the preacher whose words cut like a plow through hard ground. And still, he wavered. In the city of Antioch, Peter sat and ate with Gentile believers until pressure came from Jerusalem. Then, quietly, he pulled away. A younger apostle named Paul confronted him to his face. In front of everyone, even the rock, it seemed, could still slip. But Peter listened. They reconciled, and together, these 2 imperfect men laid the foundations of a faith that would outlast empires. Years passed. The gospel spread, and Rome began to burn. Under the Emperor Nero, Christians were hunted through the streets like game. Legend says Peter, old now and weary, was persuaded to flee the city, to save himself, to live another day. On the Appian Way, as dawn rose over the stones, he met a figure walking in the opposite direction, toward Rome, toward the fire. "Quo Vadis, Domine?" he asked. "Where are you going, Lord?" "I am going to Rome," came the answer, "to be crucified again." Peter turned around. He walked back into the city that would kill him. Tradition says he was crucified upside down. He would not die as his master had died. He did not believe himself worthy. Where he fell, they buried him. And where they buried him, centuries later, a basilica rose, St. Peter's. the largest church in the world, built over the bones of a fisherman who once denied he knew the man he loved. This is the strange arithmetic of faith, that a coward by a fire could become a martyr on a cross, that failure met with forgiveness can become a foundation. The rock was never flawless. That was never the point. He was simply the first to turn around.